Alright, we are live, ladies and germs, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about from tonight's race, as well as a lot of other things, because holy shit, was this a crazy week in the world of NASCAR. But we basically saw the Cup Series first true rain race, I think in its entire history, which turned out to be a pretty dandy good one, with some hiccups, to say the least, but overall it was still a damn good show. But there's some people that are being a bunch of fucking sourpusses, and there are people being sourpusses from last week, and I'm going to be roasting all of their asses. And there's also some big news in the world of NASCAR from this past week, and we're going to be getting into all that. So saddle up, lock and load. Might want to grab some popcorn, because I have a feeling this is going to be one long ass live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the Packer Man, and welcome to tonight's edition of The Fuel, second episode of the evening. Of course, earlier today I reviewed the Monaco Grand Prix for Formula One, which was an absolute fucking bore fest. This race was anything but a bore fest. The race I'm talking about is 2021 EchoPark Texas Grand Prix, the inaugural event at the Circuit of the Americas, which took place in changing weather conditions. Rain, 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 rain. And it was a glorious fucking race. Even though it did have some hiccups. This is our 89th edition of The Fuel. Title of this episode: Are you not entertained? Of course, I think that line came from The Gladiator. But it pretty much sums things up. Are you not entertained by what you saw tonight? Because there were quite a few people who were bitching and moaning, about how, this race, didn't know if this race should have gone ahead or whatever the case may be. But one thing's for damn sure, this race was a hell of a lot more entertaining than both the Dover and Monaco Grand Prix races combined. Like, it's not even funny how good this race was. And, I'll be honest, I came into this race with some pretty solid expectations for Circuit of the Americas, considering how good the road course racing has been in NASCAR. At least in recent times. I know there's always been like a couple of duds here and there, but I had high hopes that Circuit of the Americas would deliver. And I think, based on the size of the crowd that we saw and how good the racing was, because when these guys were in the wet, these guys were wheeling these cars around, including Ross Chastain, who got his best career finish. He was just wheeling that sumbitch around the racetrack, and it was pretty fun watching him. Of course, he's the kind of guy who goes YOLO and gives no fucks, about everything. So there you go. So he was putting on a show. But obviously Chase Elliott was the winner, although he only led like 4 laps on the day. You know, and people were pretty salty about that, which I'm going to be getting into all that. There was a lot of salt being poured tonight, and for really no good fucking reason. So let's go ahead and get into some of the headlines that we're going to be talking about. Of course, headline number one: first true Cup race in the rain. Of course, we've seen rain races in the Truck Series and in the Xfinity Series. We haven't really seen any true rain races, and some people might point to, what about the Charlotte Roval last year? That wasn't really a rain race. The rain had already moved on by that point. They were just on a damp racetrack. There wasn't really any rain to speak of, but they did have to start on the wet tires and then eventually change over to the dries. But this was not the case. I mean, there were points during this race where the rain was coming down in buckets, and then after they had their first red flag to kind of clean things up a little bit, the rain actually abated for a little while, and that made things a lot more favorable. And then near the end of this race, when it was finally called, because it was just raining too damn hard and track conditions were, you know, not so good anymore, the rain just started coming down like a monsoon. It kind of reminded me of Mid-Ohio, the Mid-Ohio Xfinity race from 2016, when, you know, it was pretty much on and off rain all through the race, and then all of a sudden in the last like 2 laps it's just started coming down by the bucketfuls. So that's kind of what this race reminded me of, but there's no question about it. This race really showcased a lot of drivers' talents behind the wheel, those who are good on road courses and those who are good in racing in the rain. And it was a fairly enjoyable race. There was one portion in the middle of the second stage that I will agree that they should have taken the time to maybe red flag the race at that point, maybe clean the back stretch up before some of the shit happened. But there were some people who were really giving some knee-jerk reactions. So we're going to get into the second headline here. Fickle bitches. A lot of really fickle bitches coming out of this race. And after some of the shit that happened in the second stage, there were people like, oh, they shouldn't be racing in the rain. And I'm talking about fans in particular. And there was even some people like, yeah, they shouldn't have gone to Circuit of the Americas to begin with, you know, and all this other fucking bullshit. Like, seriously, what the fuck do you want? Huh? You've been clamoring all the fucking time to want NASCAR to try to race in the rain and rainy conditions, and you want to have more road courses so that they can race in the rain and not have rain delays and all that other bullshit. And when they finally do it, you're saying, oh, we don't actually want this. Shut the fuck up! I swear to God, this is the most fickle fucking fan base in all of sports. You motherfuckers can't decide what the fuck you want. And I'm about sick and fucking tired of that bullshit. If you're going to complain about something, or if you're going to want to like something, stick to your fucking guns. Because wanting one thing and then all of a sudden turning around saying, well, I didn't really want it after all. Shut up. Shut your fucking mouth. Because at that point, you quite frankly don't deserve a voice. Because if all you do is fucking flip-flop back and forth for no fucking reason, then, you know, why are you even a motorsports fan to begin with? Like, seriously, road courses and rain racing, that's always been part of motorsports. What the fuck else do you want? I mean, do you want to sit there for hours upon hours on end, with nothing to watch, waiting for the race to finally fucking get started? I mean, Jesus Christ. If it weren't for the fact that they were on a road course, we would probably be looking at a Monday race. For fuck's sake. Like, I am so sick and tired of that shit. And then on top of that, you got Kevin Harvick being a fucking prissy bitch, because after he wrecked, as part of that, one of the stage 2 calamities, he basically went on record and saying, we have no business racing in the rain. That was probably the most dangerous thing, I've ever done behind the wheel of a race car. Oh, really? Harvick 2015 called, and they would like to have a fucking word with you. What a fucking hypocrite you are, Harvick. I mean, it's no wonder I don't fucking like you. I mean, all you do is throw stones in glass houses. Because I remember, Talladega 2015. Remember when you intentionally caused a big one at the end of that race just to save your fucking little title hopes? You remember that? In some ways, I'm glad you haven't won a fucking race this year, because quite frankly, you don't deserve it. Or maybe you're just getting fucking senile because you're getting up there and getting up there in years. I mean, Harvick is in his mid-40s now. And while I do agree that NASCAR, should have used a bit more discretion with what happened in the second stage, some of this, whiny, bitchy-ass bullshit, I mean, you just don't look good whatsoever, especially when you've done some stupid fucking bullshit in the past. Because that shit is going to come back and bite you in the ass. And he has the unmitigated gall to say that NASCAR has no business racing in the rain. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, who the fuck are you to dictate who the fuck are you to dictate whether or not NASCAR races in the rain? I didn't realize that NASCAR drivers nowadays were such prissy bitches. Much like this fucking fan base. What happened to the good old fucking days? When you had drivers, who just got behind the wheel of the race car and wheeled that motherfucker around and loved doing it. Regardless of what conditions they were. About sick to fucking death of this shit. Like, if you can't decide on what you want from a motorsport, then maybe this isn't the thing for you. That's my 2 cents on it. Another thing that really got on my nerves in the past week or so is how people were saying, shit about Dover and saying, well, it wasn't that bad of a race. That was passing, and it was entertaining, and all this other shit. No, people. Dover sucked. It really did. And here's the thing. I got some numbers to back up what I said. Okay, I said that you could not pass during that entire fucking race, it felt like. We hardly saw any passes whatsoever. And there were people like, there were passes all day. Oh, really? Let's take a look at this, shall we? Let's go to Racing Reference, because I actually have some numbers that back up my statement. Okay? So, Cup Series. So, what I'm going to do here is, you're going to get to see this now. Boom. Cup Series. 2021. Okay. Alright, so just for quick reference, let's see how many there were here. Wow, look at how many passes there were for the EchoPark Texas Grand Prix, which we just saw. Look at this right here. 2,760 green flag passes on a road course. That equals out to 67.3 per green flag lap. Now, granted, there were fewer laps than most other races, but damn, 67.3. What about Talladega? Wow. Circuit of the Americas had more passes per green flag lap on average than Talladega. That's pretty fucking wild. Although Talladega, as far as total overall green flag passes, 9,738. That's a lot of fucking passes. Now let's go to a shit race like, say, Atlanta. The Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500, despite how shitty that race was, and it had a lowly 8 per green flag lap, it still had 2,386 green flag passes. It's just a lot of them were at the back of the pack, and it's for places that, you know, nobody really gave a shit about. So, how many did Dover have? Look at this. Dover, 659 green flag passes, which averages out to 1.8 per green flag lap. Not even 2 passes per green flag lap. And yet on a road course, we saw 67 on average. I mean, in total green flag passes at Circuit of the Americas today was, I think, about 4 times as many as what we saw at Dover. Unacceptable, people. Unacceptable. And it's like I said, the Dover race was fucking trash. You could not fucking pass at all. And I actually have the numbers to back me up on that. So, give it up, people. Dover was fucking trash. And the numbers even back me up on that point. Just wanted to kind of bust that one because that kind of pissed me off too. But with that out of the way, let's go into some of the NASCAR news that we had been looking at the last week or so and going, holy shit, dude. The first one that I want to talk about is a bit of silly season news with a twist. It has been reported that Brad Keselowski might be leaving Penske Racing at the end of this year. This is a contract year for Keselowski. And there are reports suggesting that he might be going over to Roush Fenway. And not only have they offered him a seat, they've offered him co-ownership of the team. So, let me see if I can find this real quick. Alright, so, again, this is just a rumor right now. Nothing, as far as we know, has been confirmed. But, there is a rumor that Brad Keselowski will go to Roush Fenway with ownership. This was updated on 5/19, asked about the rumors of our deal with Brad Keselowski. So, they haven't confirmed anything. There's been a report that Brad Keselowski driving and having an ownership stake in Roush Fenway Racing appears to be a done deal, according to multiple industry sources with knowledge of the situation. In addition to sources indicating the deal is done, there are a couple of signs that indicate Keselowski will leave Penske at the end of the season and head to Roush Fenway. The general manager of his former Truck Series team, Jeremy Thompson, is already working out of the Roush Fenway Racing shop, according to sources, and Keselowski was initially scheduled to do the next-gen tire test for Team Penske 2 weeks ago at Texas, but then was replaced by Ryan Blaney. So, this was the original post on J-Ski. Brad Keselowski is considering an offer to become the next NASCAR Cup Series driver with an ownership interest in the sport. Keselowski, who's 37, has been offered a full-time Cup Series ride with Roush Fenway Racing beginning next season in a deal that would also include part ownership in a team renamed RFK Racing. Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing. Multiple sources with knowledge of the deal have confirmed. Keselowski would become the driver of the number 6 Ford, but it remains unclear how much of an ownership percentage he would have in the renamed team. However, Keselowski would be expected to play a large role on the competition side of the organization, sources said. Also unclear is whether the current driver of the 6, Ryan Newman, will move to a third team at Roush or leave the organization. So this would potentially leave the 2-team open if Penske or if Brad Keselowski were to take this deal. So who would be the new driver of the 2 car? Would Penske move, say, Austin Cindric into the 2 car, which would allow Matt DiBenedetto to remain in the 21 car? Or would they move DiBenedetto to the 2 team and move Cindric to the 21 team? Because right now, Matt DiBenedetto's future in the Cup Series is not exactly secure. He was told that he only has 1 more year in that 21 team, regardless of how good he does, because Cindric is primed for that 21 team, because Wood Brothers is currently an affiliate team with Penske Racing, basically a satellite team. So, a lot of crazy, silly season news coming out of this. And would Brad Keselowski, at this point in his career, become a part owner? Much like Denny Hamlin is now with 2311 Racing. I mean, are we starting to see a rise in driver owners once again? Because, you know, Tony Stewart did it for a long time when he formed Stewart-Haas Racing with Gene Haas. And then you have Denny Hamlin, who's now got a team with Michael Jordan, 2311 Racing, as I just said. And now we have this thing with Roush Fenway, where they're going to try to lure Brad Keselowski away with part ownership. And maybe they'll hope that that'll bring some more sponsorship dollars in, because Keselowski, I mean, he is a championship contender, race winner, former champion. I mean, he checks all the boxes. So whether or not this actually gets done remains to be seen. There's some sources that say that it's all but confirmed, but we don't have any confirmation that this has been done. Although I would imagine that Roush Fenway is probably going to, once anything is set in stone, ink dried, and all that other shit, I would imagine that they'll hold a press conference maybe in the next week or two, and they'll confirm that Keselowski is going to be a part of Roush Fenway Racing next year as both their driver and part owner. Whether that happens, like I said, remains to be seen. But there's a pretty big bombshell that dropped from this, because it was pretty crazy. But you know what else was a bombshell that came out earlier this week as well? There is hope for North Wilkesboro. Yes, the North Wilkesboro Speedway. Let me find it on here real quick. Well, what are you kitties doing? Alright, you ready for this one? This was reported by NASCAR and NBC, which is a verified account. Breaking news! North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper announced that $30 million coming from the American Rescue Plan will go towards repairs to North Wilkesboro, Rockingham, and Charlotte. North Wilkesboro last hosted a Cup race in 1996, and Rockingham last hosted one in 2004. Now, to be fair, Rockingham, it still holds racing there. Just hasn't been any of NASCAR's top tiers in recent years. But I think they still hold like late model races and shit like that. North Wilkesboro, I mean, it's for the most part been abandoned for the better part of a quarter century. And now we get this news that $10 million, for the most part, I think it's pretty much, with $30 million going towards these 3 tracks, I think it's going to be split 3 ways. So $10 million each going to each of these racetracks. Now, the thing is, the plan needs to be approved by legislature for this to happen. But it's like I've been saying before, this would be huge for the city of North Wilkesboro, because I've talked about this before, in fact earlier this year, that NASCAR leaving North Wilkesboro Speedway was a massive hit to the community, and the financial fallout is still being felt even to this day. They have never recovered from it. So now the news comes out, and this ball really got rolling at the beginning of last year, when Dale Jr., he went on record saying that, he said that he was going to take a team out to North Wilkesboro, pick weeds and all that other stuff so that the track can be scanned for iRacing, so that at least a virtual copy of the track could be saved for future generations. And then you have Slap Shoes, who's another motorsports tuber. He makes a video basically outlining why it was a major mistake for NASCAR to leave North Wilkesboro in the first place. And it's like, okay. And then North Wilkesboro was featured on the Pro Invitational as the finale for it. And people were like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then earlier this year, Speedway Motorsports Incorporated president, Marcus Smith, goes on Dale Jr.'s podcast and says that they have not forgotten about North Wilkesboro, which prompted Dale Jr. to go, what? Which got him excited. So that also got the ball rolling a little bit. And then Marcus Lemonis comes out on Twitter and says, hey, can you give me a call, Marcus Smith? So that got a lot of people excited as well, because it's like, oh my God, now they got a big time investor in Marcus Lemonis, a potential investor, who's rich beyond all belief, who's interested in supporting the racetrack as well. And he even went on record to say that he would basically fund the track with $1 million. He would offer up $1 million for track repairs and all that stuff, and he would also put a Camping World building on the property as well. And now we have this news that North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper announces as part of the American Rescue Plan that $30 million will go towards repairing North Wilkesboro, Rockingham, and Charlotte. And there are many people that are like, well, why would they invest $10 million towards what's basically been an abandoned racetrack? Rockingham and Charlotte you can kind of understand, but why would they send it towards North Wilkesboro, which hasn't hosted any major races or any racing at all for the better part of a decade, and it's been pretty much abandoned for about a quarter century? I would imagine that SMI had a meeting with the state government, and probably with Governor Roy Cooper as well, and they probably outlined a plan for how they're going to basically resurrect North Wilkesboro. Now, of course, they're probably going to have to rebuild grandstands. The buildings at the facility are basically collapsing on themselves, so they're going to have to rebuild a lot of things. Track's going to need repaved. So it's going to be a bit of an expensive project, to be sure, but $10 million is going to go a long way. That's a lot off their shoulders. So all of a sudden, it becomes a lot more appealing to try to bring North Wilkesboro back to life. And as I said before, true fans of this sport have been longing for a long time for good news about NASCAR returning to its roots. And North Wilkesboro is a part of that. I mean, before they were dropped from the schedule in '96, North Wilkesboro had been a part of every season of the NASCAR Cup Series up to that point. I mean, it was the season finale for the very first Cup season in 1949. The Wilkes 200, and then it became the Wilkes 400. And it was a big deal for the city of North Wilkesboro. It was their lifeline, basically. Kind of like how the Darlington Raceway is for Darlington, South Carolina. For a lot of these towns, I mean, a big time NASCAR race is their financial lifeline. And North Wilkesboro lost that all the way back in 1996, and they have never recovered from it. So to hear this news that, part of this $30 million is going to go towards North Wilkesboro possibly starting to see repairs and maybe even be resurrected. I mean, let's be honest here. Is it going to be on the Cup schedule next year or even in the next 2 years? I don't foresee it happening. But 2024, perhaps, I would see North Wilkesboro back on the Cup Series schedule. Because, I mean, it's got a lot of upside. I mean, it's not a big property, so upkeep costs are going to be low compared to, say, like a Texas or Charlotte. The racing, from what I've heard, is good there. The people there are going to back the race to the hilt, the track to the hilt. And I would imagine, and we've all been wanting more short track races as well as road courses. This would be another short track to add back to the schedule, and you know, and it's one that has very unique characteristics. It has an uphill downhill layout, which is very unique for short tracks in the United States. So I think North Wilkesboro getting this money to repair the racetrack is a really big deal, and I honestly hope that North Wilkesboro is resurrected in the next year or two, so that can come back to the Cup Series schedule, and we get to see races in North Wilkesboro again. It would be absolutely awesome. You know, it is a part of the history of the sport, so to see it come back to life would be a really big deal, and this is a huge step towards that happening. So that was a lot to take in, to say the least. As the cats knock my freaking phone off, give me 1 second. But yeah, lots of news to take in, to say the least. Pretty crazy week in motorsports, to say the least. But now that all that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the review itself. 32 minutes in, and we haven't even gotten to the race review yet. Like I said, there's a lot to talk about this week, so just wanted to get all of that out of the way before we get into the race review itself. The 2021 inaugural EchoPark Texas Grand Prix from the Circuit of the Americas. Like I said, this was a badass race. Stages broke down like this. Stage 1, 15 laps. Stage 2, 17 laps. And Stage 3, 36 laps. Which would make up a 68 lap race. And you're probably asking yourself, why so few laps for this race? This is a damn near 3.5 mile road course. Lap times were in the range of 2.5 minutes for these guys. That's a long ass lap time. So that's one of the reasons why laps are so short, or the lap count is so short. So beginning of the race, stage 1, 15 laps. There were 10 cars that had to go to the rear of the field for a variety of reasons, whether it be unapproved adjustments or mechanical failures. Those drivers were Chris Buescher, Denny Hamlin, Chase Briscoe, Daniel Suarez, Eric Almirola, Cole Custer, Anthony Alfredo, Eric Jones, James Davison, and Cody Ware. And it looked like rain was going to be a factor for the race. It was just spitting at the beginning of the race, and everybody had the option to switch to either the slicks or the rain tires. Since it wasn't raining yet and the track was still pretty much dry, all but about 4 drivers switched back to the slicks, which they immediately regretted, because then like a lap or two after the race began, it started raining hard. Yeah. So Tyler Reddick started from the pole, and this actually had practice and qualifying, the first one since Daytona, because this is a brand new race. So that was good to see. Blaney and Keselowski also had to go to the rear of the field for unapproved adjustments on the pace laps, because they had to remove tape from the front of their cars, because they were anticipating rain at the beginning of this thing, and it didn't happen, at least right away. So they had to go to the rear for that. McDowell, Prix, and Stenhouse, as well as Truex, opted to stay on the rain tires. Austin Cindric, who is only making his 5th Cup start, and he's on a part-time schedule this year, takes the lead in turn 1 from 3rd. Of course, he's a road course driver, a pretty good one. And then right as they come back around to complete lap 1, several drivers dive in to switch to the intermediate tires because it was starting to rain pretty hard. Truex was, like I said, one of the drivers who stayed out on the wets. Cindric leads lap 1. He was nuts on this first run, because even when it was raining hard, he was still out there on the slick tires, and he was making it work for a while. Allmendinger, Reddick, and Kurt Busch come in for the wet tires. Truex gets by Larson for 3rd, and then Bubba Wallace gets by Truex for 3rd. Truex gets back a lap later, though. Kyle Busch, Larson, and Bell, as well as DiBenedetto, come in for the wet tires. McDowell gets by Bubba for third. Cindric finally pitched from the lead for the wet tires. McDowell starts closing on Truex for the race lead. He was one of the guys who stayed out on the wet tires. Then we had our first caution on lap 8 when Suarez had a transmission issue. Of course, he had to go to the rear of the field because they changed the transmission in the 99 car. And then they have another one. Now, this one was kind of unusual, though. Because he wheel hopped into turn 12. And when he tried to get back going again, the shifter, he could not move it because it was stuck in neutral. So he had to go to the garage for repairs. I think he ended up like 8 laps down or something like that, but his race was ruined. Several drivers come in for service. McDowell stays out and leads on the restart. There was 4 wide going into turn 1. Yeesh. That was crazy. Hamlin spins in turn 8 but gets it back going again. Logano starts challenging McDowell for the race lead in the S's, but the 34 hangs on. We had Stenhouse, Briscoe, and Bubba Wallace going 3 wide down the backstretch. We saw a lot of 3 and 4 wide at points during this race. Logano takes the lead from McDowell at the end of the backstretch for a first pure lead change on lap 11. Kyle Busch nearly spins in the final turn, but gets it back going. Well, it keeps it under control. Garrett Smithy goes around at the hairpin, which was turn 11. Corey LaJoie misses turn 12. DiBenedetto gets hard into the back of William Byron's right rear. Basically tore the left front fender off the Benedetto's car and the right rear off of William Byron's car. And Byron ended up having a flat left rear tire from the contact. He would come back to finish 11th though, but unfortunately that would end his top 10 streak. This kind of sucks. Kurt Busch gets by Cindric for third. Larson gets by Cindric for fourth. And Logano wins stage number 1. So a lot of cars come in for service. Then we get to stage number 2, which was 17 laps. Logano leads the start of stage 2. 3 wide for third going into turn 1. Newman spins in the S's but gets back going. Kyle Busch gets by Buescher and Dowell in the same lap for third. Then we have our second caution on lap 19. This was one of the crazy incidents of the second stage. Kevin Harvick gets rear-ended by Bubba Wallace because he was checking up for another rear-ender as Christopher Bell got into the back of Ryan Blaney. And that took Harvick, Bell, and Bubba Wallace out of the race. 12 actually kept going even though he had a flat tire. So several cars come in for service. And the reason why people were running into the back of each other, because it was starting to get to the point where the rooster tails were basically becoming so big that drivers just could not see out of the windshield. And having double wide restarts was also kind of causing that issue. It's kind of similar to what happened at Bristol earlier this year. Logano leads on the restart. Chastain and Prix get by Logano in turn 1. Chastain gets into the race lead from it, but then Prix gets around him heading into the hairpin. But then Chastain would get back by him down the backstretch. Cindric moves up to 4th by Logano. Then we have our third caution on lap 25. When we have another incident similar to the previous one, Truex runs into the back of McDowell, which flips his hood up, so he has to back it off. And then from behind comes Cole Custer, who runs full bore into the back of Truex, nearly flipping him over. And they also hit an Armco on the left-hand side. Thankfully, that was protected by a pad, a foam pad that was right there. But that was still a hard hit for both Truex and Custer. And it was at this point that the NASCAR decided to put the red flag out. And even Scott Miller admitted at this point after the race that, yeah, they probably should have thrown the red flag after that first incident. So, I mean, if you want to slam them for that, then by all means. I mean, they should have thrown the red flag out to at least blow the water off the backstretch, because that's where the problem was basically occurring. So they took a few minutes to take the Air Titans and blow the water off the track down the backstretch. And it was at this point that the rain actually started to lighten up. So in combination with that, the track was starting to dry out a little bit. It was still damp, so they were going to be on the wets for pretty much the entirety of the race, but at the very least there wasn't like huge rooster tails. So after this, the cars would come down pit road and there would be 3 crew members who would basically service the driver, like wipe down the windshield, put like Rain-X on, like wipe off their helmet visors, that sort of thing. And they were only allowed to do just those things on this stop. And then if they wanted to, once they come back around, then they would do normal service. And also at this point, much like Bristol, NASCAR opted to go to single file restarts for the remainder of the race. Understandable. So several drivers came back in for regular services, fuel, tires, that sort of thing. So Ryan Prix stays out and leads on the restart. Kyle Busch and Cindric get by Prix and then start battling amongst themselves for the race lead. Austin Dillon gets a drive-through penalty for cutting the S's. Kyle Busch leads the first lap after the restart after a great battle with Cindric. Newman goes gravel grazing in the S's. Elliott moves up to third by Prix. Eric Jones in the 43 spins in turn 11 but gets back on. Cindric once again challenges Kyle Busch for the race lead. From turn 12 to about turn 20, they were kind of like side by side, which was pretty interesting. But Kyle holds off the 33. Elliott eventually gets by Cindric for second in the S's, so Elliott was really starting to make a charge here. And 6 through 12 was a tight battle. Like, you could throw all of those cars under a blanket at the end of this second stage. It was pretty intense. Reddick gets by Cindric for the third position, and Kyle Busch wins stage number 2. Cars come in for service, and then we get to the third and final stage, which was 36 laps long, although we would not get that far. Kyle Busch leads on the restart. Chase Elliott did not get a good restart this time, dropped back a few spots. Keselowski gets spun in turn 11 by Ryan Newman. Considering the news we've heard this week, that's kind of ironic. Then we have a battle for second between Cindric, Reddick, and Elliott. Larson and Logano join the battle royal for second on lap 37. There was like 7 cars going at it for second, while Kyle Busch would drive off with the race lead at this point. So this is actually a pretty great battle for the runner-up spot at this point. Basically, second through 10th was within 2 seconds of each other at this point in the race, several laps after the restart, on a 3.5-mile road course. I mean, if that doesn't wet your whistle, then I don't know what the fuck does, to be honest. But anyway, Elliott and Larson finally get around Cindric. Quinhouse pile drives Stenhouse in turn 11. I think that pretty much ended the double zeros day. With a broken radiator, I think, or something like that. He wasn't in contention anyway, but you know. Larson gets by Elliott for second, and Logano gets by Elliott for third, so Elliott starts dropping back a little bit. Reddick spins in the last turn underneath of AJ Allmendinger after kind of drifting up into him and bonking off of him, and that sent the 8 car around. Larson starts closing the gap to Kyle Busch for the race lead. Chastain, Allmendinger, and Kurt Busch start fighting hard for the 5th position. Kyle Busch pits from the lead on lap 42, but is told he's 2 laps short on fuel. Chase Elliott actually came in with him, and it turned out he was short on fuel as well. Chastain gets by Logano for second, and Kurt Busch by Logano for third. It was at this point that rain started picking back up, and it was getting heavier and heavier, so the track was getting wetter and wetter once again. Changing track conditions, it was crazy. Larson comes in from the lead on lap 46. Then Kyle Busch gets by Hamlin for the 4th position. Chastain pits from the lead with 22 laps to go. Elliott gets by Kyle Busch for second. Then Larson gets by Hamlin, and then Kyle Busch to move up to third. Bowman finally pits from the lead. He had been staying out for a long time. He pits with 18 laps to go. Elliott assumes the race lead, but like I said, he might have been a lap or 2 short on fuel. But I'll tell you what, these guys were doing the Drift King thing through turns 10, 11. Seeing these guys just jerking it sideways through the downhill section to the hairpin turn 11 was pretty crazy to watch. Kyle Busch pits with 16 laps to go. Then came the craziest moment of the race, and of course it's the thumbnail for this video. Kurt Busch basically hydroplanes towards turn 12, nearly nails Austin Dillon and his brother, but somehow, some way, threads the needle between the 3 and 18 cars, doesn't hit either of them, goes across the gravel trap, spins it back around, and gets it back onto the racetrack. That was unreal. If that doesn't tell you how good of a driver Kurt Busch is, then I don't know what does. I mean, he's a Daytona 500 winner, former series champion. He's a bona fide Hall of Famer at this point based on his numbers. You know, if this doesn't prove to you how good of a driver he is, then I don't know what does. But Cindric spins in turn 18. Spindrick. There you go. There's a name. But he spins in turn 18, but keeps it going. But at this point, NASCAR kind of gets the hint that, yeah, it's starting to look like it's getting a bit too dangerous to race. Because even in the wet tires, these cars are hydroplaning. I mean, there was one overhead shot of Chase Elliott where he was going down the backstretch and his car was doing the tail wag. Yeah, it was starting to get to the point where it's getting a bit too treacherous. So they threw the caution on lap 55 for the heavy rains. They brought the cars in and red flagged the race. And then with 14 laps remaining in the race is called after about 10 or so minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. And Chase Elliott wins the EchoPark Texas Grand Prix. And naturally, and this gives me a fucking headache as well, there were a lot of very salty people on Twitter, on social media, that were thinking, oh, they rigged it for Chase Elliott, they're, you know, golden boy, you know, and all this other shit. Dudes, did you not see how heavy the rain was getting and how treacherous the track was getting at that point? They had to call the race at that point. I mean, Jesus Christ, do you people just complain about every single fucking thing there is? I mean, I admittedly complain about NASCAR sometimes, but there are certain reasons, and I give those reasons why I complain about NASCAR, and it's usually the officiating is not that good at times. Some races suck ass, but for some NASCAR fans, it's like you just can't please them to save your fucking life. And it makes me wonder, again, why are you even watching this sport to begin with? And there's even one fan who apparently is a Ryan Newman follower, who keeps tweeting out, NASCAR is not a sport, or stock car racing is not a sport. And it's like, yeah, NASCAR is not a sport, it's an organization. Stock car racing is a sport, though, by definition. So there you go. But yeah, at this point I was kind of like, yeah, are you not entertained? I mean, yeah, stage 2, they should have red flagged it after that first incident. So, I mean, they certainly deserve some criticism for that one. But let's be honest here, people. If they didn't have the rain tires and they weren't at a road course, we wouldn't have seen a race today. And it was a damn good race. It was multiple times better than Monaco, which was earlier. In that race, I mean, there wasn't even a single fucking pass for position, it felt like, all race long. It was a disaster. Whereas in this race, like it showed in the fucking, like on Racing Reference, there was almost 3,000 green flag passes for position in this race. So I don't know what the fuck you want. So overall lead changes, there were 11 overall lead changes in this race. I mean, the number is not going to be that high considering that it's a road course and there were not very many laps where there could be lead changes. Only 68 laps. Well, actually, it was 55 total. There was one pure lead change the entire race. Again, it's a road course, but the racing was still phenomenal. And there were 4 total caution flags for this event. So, let's go over the results and the points, and that'll be it for tonight. So, race results. Top 10 finishers, Chase Elliott with the win. Only led 5 total laps on the day. You have Kyle Larson coming home in second once again. I think that's like 3 runner-up finishes in a row. Because he finished second at Darlington, and then second at Dover, and then second here. So 3 runner-ups in a row. Pretty sure he's getting tired of the runner-up position. Joey Logano actually led the most laps, 14 total laps. I know that's kind of hard to believe considering it's so few laps, but that's the case here. So it was actually 54 laps they completed. Ross Chastain with his best career finish. He was a treat to watch in this race for sure because he was just throwing that sumbitch all around the track. Very entertaining to watch. AJ Allmendinger comes home in 5th. Now you notice that he's not gaining any points whatsoever. That's because he has declared for Xfinity points. I think he's running Xfinity full-time this year. So that's the reason why. So this was for funsies. As my mother is calling me. God damn it. She's going to have to wait a second. Chase Briscoe comes home in the 6th position. Michael McDowell in 7th. Then Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, and Kyle Busch in the 8th position, or in the 10th position. Point standings, as my phone goes off in the background. Denny Hamlin continues to lead the way with 597 points. William Byron is 2nd. His top 10 streak did come to an end. Kyle Larson is 3rd. Joey Logano 4th. Chase Elliott in 5th. Then you have Truex, who drops all the way to 6th with his bad run. I think this is his first DNF of the year, actually. You have Ryan Blaney, and then Harvick, who had his first DNF of the year this year. It's actually his first DNF in 61 races. That's a long-ass time in between DNFs. You have Brad Keselowski and Kyle Busch running at the top 10. Rest of the playoff field, as it stands right now, Austin Dillon, Alex Bowman, who has 2 wins. Chris Buescher, who's now 13th in points. Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, and Michael McDowell. And then the rest of the top 20, Matt DiBenedetto, Kurt Busch, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., and Ross Chastain. As for my final rating for the EchoPark Texas Grand Prix, like I said, this was a damn good race. Even though the lead change count wasn't really there, it's a road course. And the fact that we saw a true rain race was, I think, a real treat. So, I mean, yeah, the stage 2 shit, I mean, they could have done better with that for sure. But overall, I'm going to give this race a solid 8 on the fuel gauge. So an 8 out of 10. A damn good race. I think a very successful venture for NASCAR at Circuit of the Americas. I mean, those grandstands were fucking packed, dude. Like, it was crazy. And it seemed like a lot of people really enjoyed the action out there. I mean, a lot of them were wearing the fucking ponchos and all that other shit. So it seems to me like they really enjoyed this race here tonight. But that is going to do it for a very jam-packed edition of The Fuel. Lots of shit to talk about. Some good, some bad. You know, that's just the way it goes. But this was a damn entertaining event. Next week is Super Memorial Weekend. We got the Indianapolis 500 and then the Coca-Cola 600. Whether or not the 600 is actually good this year, I don't fucking know. I hope it is. Because I don't want to sit through 5 hours of boring shit. So, we'll see what happens there. But that's going to do it for tonight's edition of The Fuel. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the Packerman signing out. See you later. Thank you for watching tonight's video. Be sure to like and subscribe, you rats!